Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Molly Todd, and I have been a part of this network for many years. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you in person today, but I am honored to share a few words in memory of Mario Davila, who passed away on the morning of November 6th. Sulma, Mario, and Kathy Hoffman have all offered tributes to him on the Sister Cities website and Facebook pages. But as one of your adopted historians, I wanted to share a few more words with you for this national gathering. I had the honor of working with Mario on many occasions, and most recently he spoke with me at length about his work as I completed research for my forthcoming book about sister cities. That book will come out in February, and I will let you know about it in a later moment. In the conversations that I had with Mario, he helped me understand just how central Salvadorans were to the formation of sister cities and to solidarity in the United States more generally. And this is really important. This is the kind of information that has been hidden from the historical record for decades. And the fact that it was hidden during the 1980s and 1990s makes sense in some ways because of the security risks that Salvadorans faced both in El Salvador and the United States. But that these stories continue to be hidden, I think, is a real travesty because it further marginalizes and silences what I think are the most important voices in this network of change that we are all a part of today. So I want to share with you some of the stories that Mario shared with me so that we can all better understand and honor his important life work. Mario Davila was among a small but very active cohort of Salvadoran exiles in the United States who weaved a thick transnational solidarity network in the 1980s and 1990s. Like many others, Mario was affiliated with the Popular Liberation Forces, the FPL. For those of you unfamiliar with the war-era history of El Salvador, the FPL was one of the 5 political military organizations that made up the coalition of the FMLN, and the FMLN was the group that fought to bring about revolutionary change in El Salvador during the 1980s and early 1990s. Cultivating solidarity relations with U.S. activists was a really important part of the FPL's activities and efforts to bring about that change. Mario described himself as a full-time volunteer who was always active with the FPL. In the United States, he quietly represented the FPL through his work with the Comité El Salvador, the American Friends Service Committee, Sister Cities, and many other groups. In many cases, the FPL leadership placed representatives in strategic sites around the United States to do this kind of work, and Mario was one of these representatives. He told me that he and the other representatives usually stayed in one site for about 8 months, just long enough to get a sense for the situation on the ground, to make connections, to figure out who they could trust, and when it was possible to set the foundations for a solidarity group or an accompaniment project. In short, he and the others would assess whether such a group was possible in a given site, and if it was, he would help to start it up. Once it was on its feet, then he would move on to another site and begin that whole process again. Mario worked alongside Salvadorans all over the country to guide U.S. activists and to harmonize solidarity efforts in the United States on a broad scale. And he told me how near the end of every year, he and other representatives from all over the U.S. would gather in Washington, D.C., and these were called nevadas. They're called this because they were like snowstorms of people descending on the capital city of the United States. At these meetings, attendees would assess their work from the previous year, and then they'd set some objectives for the following year so that they would all be working in concert with one another in their different sites. Mario coordinated his efforts with Salvadorans outside the United States as well. For example, he attended meetings often with high-level FPL officials outside the U.S., And it was during such a meeting like this in 1983 that the concept of sister cities and sister parishes was born as a project of the FPL, or something that the FPL would like to support. Mario also spent time in the Mesa Grande refugee camp in Honduras, meeting with the refugee leaders there and discussing plans for returning to El Salvador and for accompaniment and sistering projects. Mario's work in the United States offers an example of how these mobile FPL representatives set the foundation for this network, the U.S. El Salvador Sister Cities Network. He began his U.S.-based work in Washington, D.C. He then relocated to a town in New Jersey, which he described as difficult because of the conservative bent in that environment. And so he moved on to a more liberal area, the Boston metropolitan area. After about 8 months in Cambridge, he opted to stay, in large part because he had married Sarah, an area resident. Mario continued working from his Cambridge base, helping launch sistering relationships between Cambridge and San Jose Las Flores, between Belmont and El Higueral, and Arlington and Teocinte. In his role as a builder of sistering relationships, Davila attended a lot of important meetings, helped to organize and facilitate the very first national gathering of Sister Cities activists in 1988. It was out of that meeting that the National Center for El Salvador U.S. Sister Cities was born. Mario recruited and guided the work of generations of U.S.-based activists, and he coordinated dozens of delegations of U.S.-based activists and citizens to El Salvador, and many, many other things. In short, Mario was a key player in a relatively small but very dynamic group of Salvadoran activists in the United States. Without him, many of our East Coast sistering committees and affiliates would not exist today as they do. And without Mario and his compatriots, the Sister Cities Network would likely never have existed. So join me this weekend and beyond in honoring Mario's life, his work, his ideals, his humanity. Let us carry on his legacy, continuing in small ways and large. I was afraid this would happen. Let us carry on his legacy and continue working in small ways and large, at home and abroad, to make this world a more just and equitable place. Mario Dávila, Presente.